For a lot of people, fear controls them and leads them to total inaction.
But what you should do is to use the fear as a tool to grow.
It doesn't really matter who I talk to. I feel that fear is one of the biggest motivating emotions that people seem to come to. It doesn't matter what they're trying to do. Getting into real estate, starting a business, making some bigger life changes, whatever it might be, people seem to always have some rooting in fear. And it's very rare for people to be able to find themselves acting in passion. So I want to ask you the question so we can dismantle fear a little bit. What do you think is people's biggest fears when it comes to making any changes to their life?
Changes.
Change yourself.
Changes, right? Like change of mindset, change of the environment, change of the real estate market, stock market, any sort of changes. It's going to get people a little anxious because they're not 100% sure what they can expect.
When I was younger, I used to listen to a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, and he used to say some pretty cheesy stuff. But I mean, a lot of it makes sense. But he talks about how people want to have a degree of certainty, uncertainty, and he talks about, like, do you like surprises? And he's like, yes, I like surprises, but you don't really like surprises that are bad, right? You only like surprises that make you happy. So it depends on how it is that you're framing this in your mind. You like the surprise of your real estate going up in value and you made a ton of money. You don't like the surprise of it going down. People are rooted very often in the negative, and it's really hard to dismantle that. So how do you think people should be going to get over it?
I think the main reason to actually overcome the fear is to really try to understand it, right? Like if you understand all the risks and you know exactly what your battle plan is when things go wrong, I'm sure that's going to inspire a bit of confidence in any sort of action. The biggest issue that people have is that they're not taking the action to understand the situation, which makes them fearful when it comes to investing or do anything outside of their comfort zone.
That's actually a very good point. And I think what we can even illustrate there is how people, even when they learn so that they can educate themselves to take action, sometimes people lie to themselves and they're actually learning for inaction. You know, the analysis paralysis thing? Everybody's just finding an excuse why not to do things. They read about it, they learn about it, and they say, look at all the reasons why I can't do this, instead of finding one reason why you can.
At any given time, you can find 100 reasons why you shouldn't be doing certain things. Back in 2020, they say, okay, COVID just happened. It's not a good time to get into real estate. 2021, they were like, okay, price is too high. And in 2022, they say the rate is too high. Always excuses, there's reasons. And by the way, sometimes it might be right for them to not take any action, but you gotta keep gaining those knowledge, understand exactly when you can get in, because those type of skill set is what's going to get you ahead in life.
People need to have a little bit of confidence in themselves and not so much just thinking that everything is up to chance. You are a participant in whatever it is that you're doing. You are the variable you have control over. People need to learn to exercise that. So I want to ask you now, I know a guy, he comes over and he says that he's got about $150,000 that he's worked his entire life for. He is scared to death about the idea of spending that money or investing that money into a property. Let's dismantle that a little bit. Why do you think he's so afraid?
Because he's never done it before and he never looked into that before. He just knew that real estate might be a vehicle. If you're not trying to prepare yourself and try to learn the necessary skill set, you're always going to feel a little uncomfortable about the idea of putting that hard-earned money into something.
I think when people have that kind of money and they spend a lifetime saving it, working and doing things that they already know, and now having to do something that they don't know or trust in others, relinquish control. Because when you're working, saving money, putting it aside, you are in a great deal of control. You know what's happening, you have your certainty there, and it's hard to feel comfortable enough to relinquish that. But that money now, $150,000, for people who save that over, let's say, the course of 10 years, that represents 10 years of somebody's life saving, grinding, making sacrifices, concessions. And if you go and use that and you lose it, obviously that's going to be really hard to stomach. So what do you do with that? One of the things I learned when it comes to risk has a lot to do with this ivory tower concept. People work, they build up their savings, or they start to ascend in terms of their position, and they get high in the ivory tower. When you're low at the ivory tower, if you end up falling from the ivory tower, it's not going to hurt very much. But as you get taller and taller, you become actually a little more risk adverse the more you've accumulated, because you want to protect it. So people have a natural inclination to want to protect these things. That's why you see very savvy real estate investors or people who have a degree of money not taking high risk for high returns. They want moderate returns for very moderate risk, because they are now at a certain point where they are high enough, they don't need to ascend so fast. And that is something that you will see in terms of what seasoned investors will do versus unseasoned investors, or people who have money and people who don't.
But problems are going to be a little different, because people who are considering getting into real estate, they're trying to figure out how to make money. People who already made it, they're going to figure out how to protect the money. Making money is one thing, keeping the money is another thing, right? So the strategy will be a little different based on the stage you're in.
I ask myself sometimes the question of how would I do things differently if I had to do things again? Knowing what I know now, because we're talking about learning, researching, getting some education, I would probably be very aggressive and go into massive amounts of debt. When you save up money to spend, you now have something to lose. But when you have no money and all you have is drive, you have nothing to lose, right? So you can go partner up with people, borrow money, you can do a bunch of things and try to get any scrapes and bruises. Don't be stupid about it. Don't be totally reckless, but be brave. brave and don't have the fear. You have the fear because you have something to lose. And that's one of the things I see with people who save their money.
Yeah, something to lose, lack of knowledge. For anybody who actually have a bit of saving, very first thing that you want to do is to actually put that money into your education. Try to learn something. Learn something from someone that you look up to, right? It could be real estate investor, it could be business owner, it could be, let's say, stock, right? Anybody who's done it and has a lot of results to showcase. Learn from these people because there's a reason why they could do it and you haven't been able to do it. And as you're learning those skills, you're going to feel a little bit more confident because now you know where the risks are and you can actually act accordingly.
I think a lot of people who go to seminars right now, one of the things that they have to deal with in terms of fear is they have family supporting them. And that may seem like a huge advantage to many people, but one of the things that they're most afraid of is messing up with some money that their family gave them, because that's a huge burden. And people don't want to mess with their family's money, and people don't want to mess with their friends' money. And that's usually the people who are supporting you the most and want to see you succeed. And they might put money forth to help you forward. People end up becoming so afraid of spending that money or using that money to invest because they don't necessarily believe in themselves. I remember when we first met, you actually had a lot of things that I think you were afraid of. And I remember you had one conversation you had with your mom. And I remember she said to you, don't you think that you have to be really brave in order to quit your engineering job or to leave that behind and to go and do something like real estate or property management? And I remember you had a very smart response, which is that I think you have to be very brave in order to leave your financial future in somebody else's hands. That's really understanding fear from a different level.
Yeah, no, honestly, I look at the fear from a different angle. It's the fear for the current gain or your future gain. Definitely feel like the engineering job was paying me pretty decently, but I actually wasn't willing to spend 5 years, work extremely hard just to get promoted to the other side of the office. I was looking at those engineers, sure, they're making a little bit more, but it's not where I wanted to be. When I was having the conversation with my mom, I was really assessing exactly what I had. I didn't have anything. So I might as well try to dive into business and see what happens, right? What I can actually do in a year or 2 year time frame. And I think you made the exact same decision. As you had a nursing job, that itself pays you over $30 an hour. You didn't take it.
One of the things that you have to deal with when it comes to making those decisions, people might look at you, especially when you first start off a business, how much money are you making? They're going to ask you, and you're going to be making like nothing, especially in the beginning. And then they say, you know what, if you had just gone and worked as a nurse, saved your money, just invested in real estate, as opposed to starting your own real estate business, work a job like a normal person, invest the savings, would you be further ahead? And it becomes questionable. But the thing is that it depends on how you look at it, because some people look at it as in, this is the money I'm making now. And some people look at it as in, this is how much of the pie I'm taking. And when it's a percentage and you're taking a bigger piece of the pie, 50%, if you can make that pie big, now we're talking some serious money. It's scary to take control over things that, you do not naturally have control over. But the minute you learn how to take control over things, like people who do a little bit of a side hustle and make a little bit of passive income, that's addictive. Then you all of a sudden realize that it doesn't matter if my boss won't give me a raise, I can give myself a raise because of my own efforts. And if you're that type of person, it's scary to take that type of thing into your own hands rather than just putting yourself in the system.
Being an employee, that's one stream of income. Running your own business now, you might have 10, 15, 20, or even 100 clients. That's the source of incomes. You're not going to be concerned about offending to any one of your clients. Again, you still need to put a reputation on the line, but at the same time, it's like you don't have to worry about this person getting upset at you for something and all of a sudden you lose the entire income from your company.
Fear is a strong motivating factor that I feel that if you harness it correctly and position yourself appropriately with respect to fear, it is a great tool to progress yourself and to make yourself learn. It's a great motivating factor. You should motivate yourself through passion as much as possible. But you know how they say you should do one thing every day that scares you? I know it's a cheesy thing, but technically speaking, anything you feel uncomfortable with, stress induces learning. Without stress, there is very little learning.
If you can just do one thing that makes you uncomfortable every single day, you're going to realize that after 30 days, your pain tolerance gets a little higher. And that in a way is kind of like training your muscle, training your mind. Once you start getting more and more comfortable about the uncertainty, you're going to get pretty confident with any kind of situation.
And that's going to be one of the things that I feel will help you to outperform. I think what we can conclude is this. Being able to contend with fear is like being able to accelerate and grow yourself better and faster than most of your competitors, because a lot of people avoid fear, avoid things that make them uncomfortable. But if you can learn to dive into things, that is where you can really advance, progress, make some money, and make something of yourself.